Good morning, 7 East. Well, we made it, people. I really cannot believe it. I don't even know what the obsession is with even numbers, but the fact that this is the 40th episode of LEPRE Radio means something. I don't quite know what it is, but now the number looks like two eyes and a nose. So there's episode 040. Who knows how many we'll have at the end. Hopefully it ends on an even number. That would make me feel a lot better. But today's an even number at least. Our 40th episode on a Thursday. We are on the air. A limited show today because I want to do the assignment, narrate it, and go over it with you. That's assignment that has been put in classroom today. It's North versus South. But first, our daily countdown. So it is Thursday. You didn't have a new assignment yesterday. You have a new assignment today. There's also a Google Meet at 12:30 today. We'll go over the trip to Albany. I'll also answer questions about the assignment. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be unveiling some clips from an awesome documentary. You're going to have two assignments using this documentary next week. This was going to be a second or a third or second assignment this week, but I decided not to make it an assignment because you already did the Albany reflections. But the first major battle of the Civil War, Battle of Bull Run, first Battle of Bull Run, there's a video for that, which I'm going to put up on Classroom tomorrow. And we'll have Civil War Quiz It Live, some questions on just the first week. Technically, it's the first 3 days of stuff from the Civil War. 22 is the number of the day. Days of school remaining. It might be less. I can't imagine it being more than 22, though. We're really getting down there in the numbers. And now, the main topic of today, the North versus South assignment. So I'm going to X out of my Free LEPRE Radio presentation. I'm going to go to the Google form. And as usual, it's 15 points, 15 questions. And you're going to use the slideshow. Now, I want to tell you this right off the bat, that the slides go in the same order as the questions. That does not mean that question 1 is on slide 1, question 2 on slide 2, and so on. It just means they go in order. So you're not going to find a question here at the beginning that's going to be at the end of the slideshow. It goes in order. So if you've gone pretty far and you can't find the answer, you should go back. It's pretty evenly spaced throughout. So this is the slideshow you're going to be looking at. And I'm just going to go over it and read it aloud. And this way, if you want to listen to me narrate it, you can do the questions simultaneously. Or you can watch separately and then do the questions while looking at the slideshow after. So let me go into present mode. We have the American Civil War, United States of America, known as the Union, versus the Confederate States of America, known as the Confederacy. And here are the years it lasts, from 1861 to 1865. Now, if you're a Civil War buff, as some of you or some of your parents might be, you might say, well, guess what? That flag is incorrect. Well, technically that's true. So a note on flags. I start with this in case anyone wanted to point that out. Different flags were used by both sides throughout the war. I used the two from the title page just to simplify the two sides because they're the most well-known. Here are a few other flags in case you see them and are confused which side is which. So in the top right, that is the main Confederate national flag. The one at the bottom, it was on the previous slide, is the battle flag, which is most well known. And the Union flag, the designs changed throughout. There was a flag that included West Virginia. There was other flags that did not include West Virginia at the beginning. So this is a strange time where a lot of different flags are used to represent the same thing. So if you see these flags on the left, that refers to the Union or the United States. If you see the flags on the right, that refers to the Confederacy or the Confederate States of America. So geographic strengths. I'm going to go through the strengths and weaknesses of each side. So it's kind of like before a football game or something. We decide which side has the stronger offense or stronger defense. We're doing the same thing, but for these two sides in the Civil War. So geographic strengths, you can see kind of the layout of the United States. Light blue are the states that had slavery but chose to remain in the Union. They're known as border states. But the dark blue states are those that are firmly in the Union. They are free states staying with the United States. The red states are the states that accepted slavery and seceded or left the country. And you can see their capital cities are actually very close to each other. Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C. Extremely close. So you know that a lot of the fighting is going to take place right along the East Coast between those two cities. U.S. territories, the CSA tried to claim the southern territories, as you can see with the text going across. U.S. territories firmly still in the north. No really risk of losing those yet. So the states on each side. As you can see, the Union side, the USA, has many more states on its side. The Confederacy, if you count them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 states. So they only have 11 states in their group. They could have had states like Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri that were slave states, but they chose not to join them. Military strength. So if you're looking at geography, it's pretty obvious the Union has the advantage right here. They have most of the land. They have most of the states on their side. They have the West Coast. They have the Northeast. South is pretty isolated. So military strengths. The Union Army. First, you're going to identify them by seeing they wear a navy blue uniform. Nicknames. They're either called the Yankees by those Southerners or the Federals because they fight for the federal government in Washington. Size, well, the Union is going to have about 2.7 million people to choose from in terms of available soldiers. There's more population in the Union than there is in the Confederacy. And here we have some anthem and songs that they would sing in the Army. Star Spangled Banner, which becomes the national anthem. Battle Hymn of the Republic, probably a very famous Civil War song. You may have heard the tune, but not exactly sure where it comes from. When Johnny Comes Marching Home, Battle Cry of Freedom, all of those last three are very famous Civil War songs. And here, just so you can identify them, the uniforms almost look black. It's a dark navy, depending on how you're seeing them. It is navy blue, though. It's kind of a tradition since the Revolutionary War. The United States wears blue. Here, you can just kind of see it clearer. Union Navy, they have 90 ships at the start of the war. So, think about having the West and East Coast. You should assume that the Confederacy is actually going to have a lot less. So the Confederate Army, the uniform they wear is gray. A lot of soldiers in the Confederacy don't even have official uniforms, but their color is really gray. Some of them wear beige uniforms. They're nicknamed Rebels. Size, they only have about 1.2 million available soldiers, so it's less than half of what the Union has. And their anthem are songs, so Dixie is like the anthem, unofficial anthem of the South, Bonnie Blue Flag, just some songs. You can YouTube them if you want. I believe Ole Miss, the college, Dixie is their fight song, and if you watch college football or college sports, they play Dixie at sporting events. And here we have the Confederates in the gray uniforms. Here we have Robert E. Lee standing with binoculars. And here, this is probably closer to what you would actually see on the right, this painting here. You see gray uniforms, but a lot of people just don't have uniforms. South didn't have as many materials, so if you were someone just joining off of your farm, you didn't really have the luxury of having shoes, for example. You see this guy down here doesn't even have shoes. But their color was gray. So the Confederate Navy, only about 1/3 the size of the United States. They have 30 ships at the start of the war. So they are outmatched in terms of numbers, both in the Army and Navy. Now, economic strengths. So this is a great chart just showing the difference between the North and South. So the population, as you can see, the North has double, and that's reflected both in just numbers of people, but also the available soldiers. South, no surprise, farming is their strength. But the value of the farmland, the North just has so much more land at this point that the value of it is more. Remember, the North is all about factories and workers in factories, meaning the manufacturers. So those numbers are going to be way more than the South, and the value of the manufacturers as well. And all the money, of course, financial interest with trade, that's going to be located in the North as well. So the banks, and not to mention railroads, which we looked at last week. North has the railroads as well. So North has a lot of economic strengths. Here we have the railroads and maps just showing. Obvious, most of the railroads are in the North. And that can provide a lot of advantages. Moving troops around, moving supplies. The South, it's going to be a lot more difficult to travel. Now we're getting to leadership strengths. So the Union, we have President Abraham Lincoln in charge. In terms of military experience, he was a member of the Illinois State Militia in 1832. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 1847, only served one term. He became the Republican nominee for president in 1860, and he was elected in 1860 and re-elected in 1864. So that's his background. You could still say kind of a young politician, doesn't have that much experience. So a lot of it's going to be learning on the fly. Now, commanders of the Union Army, we have 4 people here, put in charge at different points in the war. Now, generally, when you have a large number of people filling the same spot in a short amount of time, that's not usually a good thing. Think about a sports team. If you have a successful coach, you stick with one coach for a long time. Imagine Bill Belichick with the Patriots. He's been coaching there for like 20 years. Usually, when you have many different people in charge, that means things are not going well. So that gives you an idea how Lincoln has to go through several different generals to find somebody who's good enough to actually lead the Union in the Civil War. Now, for the Confederacy, you have President Jefferson Davis. He was in the West Point U.S. Military Academy, class of 1828. Remember, we read about that with reform movements. He served in the Mexican-American War. Then he went on to serve as U.S. Secretary of War from 1853 to 1857. He was a senator from Mississippi from 1858 to 1861. And then he was elected as President of the Confederate States of America in 1861 after secession. So he has a lot of war experience. And I believe, I could be wrong about this, but there was actually possibility of him actually just being in the Confederate Army as opposed to just the president at some point. Now, commanders of the Confederate Army, they really only have one throughout the war, which kind of, going back to my Belichick example, if you only have one person doing it, generally they're good at their job. So Robert E. Lee, he was the West Point Military Academy class of 1829. He served in the U.S. Army in the Mexican-American War. He was the superintendent of the West Point Military Academy from 1852 to 1855. So he was in charge of training America's Army. And he was so good that Lincoln offered him the job of being the commander of the Union Army. But dramatically, Lee refuses, and he says that he can't, in his good conscience, fight against Virginia, his home state. So he went and joined Virginia when they seceded and refused to lead the Union Army. And of course, that is one of our top 10 anime betrayals. So we have Lee in his Union uniform and then Lee in his Confederate uniform. Very sad. Yes, he looks like Colonel Sanders from the KFC ads. So goals. What goals did each side have? So the Union goals were to end the armed rebellion in the South, the Confederacy, and bring the seceding states back into the Union. That was their goal. Notice what's not up here. Ending slavery was not a goal at the beginning of the war. It was to end the rebellion, bring the states back. The Confederate goals were to win independence from the United States government. And they wanted to do this because they wanted to make sure they kept slavery legal in a new independent nation called the Confederate States of America. Now the differences in strategy. So the Union strategy, the first strategy, was designed by General Winfield Scott. You saw his picture a few slides back. And it was nicknamed the Anaconda Plan. Anaconda is a type of snake. So the Union strategy had three parts. Number one, set up a naval blockade of the South, cutting off the South's trade with the rest of the world so they're hurt economically and can't pay for weapons and uniforms. Two, take control of the Mississippi River to split the Confederacy in two, divide and conquer, very common strategy in wartime. And three, capture the Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia, and in doing that you're going to arrest the leaders of the Confederacy like Jefferson Davis and force them to surrender. So the idea was to strangle the South like an anaconda snake does to its prey. And here we have this very famous drawing, Scott's Great Snake. So it's the Anaconda Plan. So you see the snake and the tail is capturing Richmond. The snake is going around the ocean because it's a blockade of Union ships. And the snake is coming around the other side and taking the Mississippi to divide the Confederacy. So the Anaconda Plan. There were disagreements in the Union, though. Not everyone in the military agreed with General Scott's Anaconda Plan. Opponents thought his plan would take too long, and it was better to concentrate all of the Union forces in an all-out attack on the Confederate capital of Richmond. So people were saying, look, this is going to take a long time, a lot of money. Their capital is right there. Let's just go for it. And we're going to see why that's very difficult very soon. The belief was that if crushed in early battles along the northern border with the Confederacy, that the Confederacy would actually collapse. They would lose confidence in their ability to win if they lost very early on. So people who were against the Anaconda Plan felt like, look, we got to attack fast, discourage them from continuing the fight, get them to surrender quickly. Now, the Confederates had two different strategies, and it took them a while to really settle on one of them. First plan was play defense, force the Union troops to take forever marching and fighting through the entire South, and keep fighting until the Union losses are so high that they quit fighting and accept the independence of the Confederate States of America. This should sound familiar because this is exactly what America did against Britain in the Revolutionary War. Now, Plan 2 was a less popular plan, but it was to play offense. Quickly march north to catch the Union by surprise. This would save time and resources that would otherwise be lost in the South. So if you're always playing defense, that means all the food you use is your food. All the land that you're kind of occupying is being destroyed as your land. If you play offense, you're taking the fight to the north, and you don't have to worry about your stuff getting destroyed in the process, so it saves resources. And ultimately, this was leading to hoping to defeat the Union armies and capture Washington, D.C., and force the government to accept independence of the Confederate States of America. Now, disagreements in the Confederacy. So both sides, there's disagreements. The Confederacy adopts Plan Number 1 at the start of the war. Robert E. Lee, on the other hand, the top general, wanted Plan Number 2. And he was only allowed to actually follow Plan Number 2 in 1862 only after it was clear the war wouldn't be over quickly. So we're going to see that a lot of what happens in the war depends on the strategies both sides picked when starting out. So this is the last slide of the slideshow. You can rewind it if you want to go through it. But this kind of goes over the strengths and weaknesses of each side and gives you an idea of what to expect as we learn about the Civil War going forward. So this is going to be the end of our episode. I'll talk about it some more at the Google Meet. But as for me today, this is Mr. LEPRE signing off in this edition of Free LEPRE Radio.